Before we bring up the panel, the other thing I want you to start thinking about is your aha moments. Arlen always does this with his gatherings in terms of what is it that you learned today that you'll bring back to the office? So start thinking about the aha moments, because I'm going to ask people about their aha moments. I'll share one with you right now. Up in the enterprise, one of the biggest aha moments that ever happened was ServiceNow realizing the market needing to shift from IT service management to workflow automation. If you read the history of ServiceNow up in the enterprise and their company growth and their valuation and their revenue growth and their customer success, that inflection point, when they realized we're not just an ITSM player, we're a workflow automation player, their valuation went through the roof and the enterprise came just running in their direction in terms of executing on that. I think everyone in the room has the same opportunity here to work with the vendors in the booths next door to do that same type of journey. But we also wanted to make sure, again, that we have real-world examples, what works, what doesn't work, how you do it, how you don't do it. And I'd like to bring up our panelists. Let me make sure I have the slide for it. Hang on a second before I do that. Okay. We're very fortunate to have three experts share with us their journeys, what to automate, what not to automate, and why. Austin, Brandon, Callan, can you guys come on up and we'll get the conversation going? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us. Good. Got it? Okay, great. First of all, thanks for joining us, guys. It's good to be here. Good to have you.
Happy to be here.
Let me just do a microphone test right on down. Why don't we, as we do that microphone test, why don't you spend 30 seconds or so telling us about yourself and your business, just so people have context.
Cool, thanks.
Sounds great.
Yeah, Callan Sapien, long time in the channel, was early on ConnectWise employee and then left actually to found a DevSecOps automation startup company and sold that to Sophos, who promptly killed it. So really happy to be here and happy that Aaron picked that up. Now I'm working at a company that works really well with Sophos. I'm early on employee for MSP bots. We do triggers and automation and give you visibility. And so really excited to be here today.
Awesome. My name is Brandon Martinez. I am the founding and managing partner of ZenTop Consulting, along with my amazing business partners, BJ and Sarah Pote, who unfortunately can't be in this room today, but they are watching virtually. So hello, I'll put a good image on for us, I promise. I started out at an MSP. I started out in Arizona, got rid of that, moved out to California, started working for BJ and Sarah at their MSP, Top Technology. Got on board with Roost way back in 2022 when they very first started. And over the years, we decided that we built up a lot of process, a lot of knowledge, a lot of workflows that we can use to help grow the MSP community as a whole. And that's where ZenTop was born. So we do process and automation consulting for MSPs by the MSP.
My name is Austin Blamosy Ford from Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been in the MSP space for 7 years, give or take. I started just doing typical end user support day to day. Kind of started to move up, got into the centralized services position, started doing internal work, working with my RMM to do automation. And then about April last year, we started with Roost, and I really got into automation and started looking at the big picture of how can we have this really transform our business and go from just the RMM automation to let's do this with everything we work with. That's pretty much where I've come from.
Great to have you all three here. Thank you for carving out your time and sharing your expertise. Whenever we do panels, I like to think of them in chapters. And we don't want to over-script them. We really want to make sure that there's a dialogue between the room and you guys. So what I like to do, it's almost like bowling. I'll set up the pins, we'll knock a few down, but you guys are really the bowlers in the room. You're going to really knock down the pins. So the three chapters, we'll spend about 15 minutes on each one. First up, identifying what to automate and then sort of building a roadmap for that. Spend about 15 minutes on that. Second chapter, managing that roadmap and communicating the process. And then third, sort of, where are we going in the future, all right? So, again, 15 minutes on each. Let's really start about, getting started with the automation. Austin and Brandon, I think I'll start with you guys on this. what was the first automation you wanted to build, and why? How did you focus in on that one thing and ignore the hundreds of other opportunities in terms of what to automate?
The obvious first thing we started with was user onboardings. It's the quickest way to just get some value out of an automation tool. Some things I've learned on that is when I started, I kind of did it a specific one for each customer, and it was really inefficient and time consuming. So what I kind of learned is take your automation and make it more robust. Make it so that it can handle a lot of situations and a lot of different cases that may come up across your client base. And then build that into your automation and make it so it can do something when that exists at a customer and ignore it when it does not.
Does that mean then you're constantly revving that first automation? Like it's sort of this living thing that you continually refine, or is it locked in code?
It's definitely something I refine.
Okay.
And a big part of that is, I'm doing one customer at a time. And as I do that, I realize, here's a new situation that I need to account for. And so I'll build that into the automation, whether it can handle it or not.
Got it. Okay. Brandon, where did you start and why?
Yeah, so the very first automation, I had to actually look it up before this talk, sorted by oldest workflow first. Back in June of 2022, the first one that had my name on it was DNS check. And I didn't know what that meant, so I opened it up. And the idea behind it was basically reach out to the Cloudflare API for all of our customers, figure out what the API records should be based on our documentation, and make sure they match. I don't know if this happened to anyone in this room, but customers who have control over their own DNS like to change things and then wonder why they don't get email anymore. And I'm going to throw a curveball and say that was the wrong one to pick for my first automation. I think when we very first started, I started too big. I don't think I ever finished that one. I don't think it's in use right now. And the reason I bring that up is because I want to make a point that when you are picking the very first thing to automate, start with something small and repeatable. If you have heard me talk before at conferences, on calls, you will know that I will say the word sub-workflow about 40 times in a conversation. If someone wants to keep count, I'll say sub-workflow again, so that's number 2. Just keep ticking it up, and if you hit 40, I'll have a prize for you at our booth or something. But start small. Start with something that you can get a quick win out of, and start just iterating on top of that. Like what Austin here said about he's still iterating on his initial first workflow. Make something that you can build on. Don't get too caught up in the I have to get something super crazy complicated going right away. Find something that you can just get going, get the confidence of, I finished my first workflow. Everything else from here is going to be just rolling forward.
Yeah. How about the MSP bot's perspective on this? Are there certain things where you can make sure that the MSP succeeds with this automation first, or does it vary from MSP to MSP? What's your advice to the attendees here?
I think that for me, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? I'm a strategist by trade, but it's really about establishing that automation culture. And a lot of the time that means you said it perfectly. You don't always start with that big thing that you think you're going to get this amazing ROI. We can see that with the BI and we say, okay, well, this is the thing you should work on because it's going to give you that immediate jump in gross service margins. But really, it's about establishing the wins and then building on those wins, making sure that you either focus on typically pains, right? There's this idea of pain relief or gain creation. And we typically tell people, start with the pain. Start with that thing that is driving you nuts, your team nuts, your customer nuts. Figure out what ticket is the thing that keeps driving them. What do they come to you? And go
do
from
they
there.
know the pain? Do they know the pain, or do you have to help them discover it? Because
A lot of the time we
sometimes
have
you're
to
so overwhelmed by pain, you don't know where it's emulating in the body. You're just in pain.
You're spot on.
Yeah.
It's get that inflammation down, right? and then build on that, go from there, and then you'll start to see the wins. You'll start to uncover other areas once you get rid of one pain. And typically it's good to start with customer pain because then you're solving 2 pains at once.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thanks for framing it so far. I want to do a double check with AV. Do we have an extra microphone, or should I give up mine for running questions in the audience? Anyone? We have them all. So you would need my microphone to run, correct? Okay. Can someone come take this microphone from me for running, please? Thank you. And by the way, Gary, awesome to see you. Thank you for everything over the years, man. You've been great to me. That sounds great. Thanks. I appreciate it. Okay. I promised you we'd keep this interactive. I do have more questions about getting started, but who the hell cares about me? I care about you. What questions do you have for the panel about getting started here? I mean, one of my follow-up questions, I'm not seeing a hand yet. If I see a hand, I will stop talking. But one of my first questions is, what is considered a quick win? Like, is a quick win days, weeks, months, quarters? How do you qualify that?
I'd say quick wins, I generally try to find something that I think will be simple to set up and something that's repeatable. So something that's done once a day or at least a few times a week. Look for those things that you're not going to spend too much time creating, but is done repeatably throughout the week. That way you can get a really quick big win. And I think that can really kind of catapult you further into more automations as a good starting point.
Right.
Yeah, I think repeatable is the key word there. I would say people will ask me what's the most useful small automation you've had, and it actually came from the Roost Crate marketplace. It is a workflow that will look in a 365 tenant, check if the user is enabled and licensed, and if it is, make sure they're in active contact and ConnectWise. If those two conditions aren't met, take them off. It's one of those things that happens so repeatably and often that we don't even think about it anymore. Like it's just there. And this is something that our administrator in tier ones would have to check whenever they would do a user onboarding. They have to make sure the user was created as a contact in our PSA, and then when they get taken off, they would have to make sure that they were marked as inactive. So find the things that are super quick and easy to forget about almost until you look at the time-saving report and you go, I had no idea we were doing that this often.
Yeah, I would say the only thing I would add to that, because it's spot on, is showing visible progress, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's quick to complete end to end, but you want to show that visible progress so that people feel like you're moving forward and make sure that it's measurable, especially early on. Later on, you start to take for granted how much of an ROI you're getting, and it does start to add up, but it's really easy to see. But early on, you really want to make sure that it's measurable.
Okay, great. Earlier today, Aaron mentioned this automation center of excellence, and that trend, by the way, that trend started in the enterprise as well. If you talk to Accenture and others, they'll tell you, like business intelligence, there was always a center of excellence in these companies that did BI first. So, Austin, I think from your vantage point, did you form a committee to sort of get automation right? And if so, part A, who's on the committee and why? And then part B, is it just a discussion, or are you like using business intelligence to help form the views of the committee?
Yeah, so it really does springboard off the Center of Excellence that Aaron talked about. So the people on that committee is someone from our virtual CIOs who have the big picture of what our customers are going to be doing for the next 5 years. Someone from our SRTs, which is kind of like our front line. They do a lot of the simple like password reset stuff, things that take 15 minutes. Someone from leadership, because they have the big picture of the whole company and what we're kind of looking for. Someone from centralized services, which is usually me. I also have my manager who I work with. Someone from like billing and dispatch, so they kind of know our billing processes. How does that work? Where are we kind of losing money at? And then someone from our projects team, since they're doing a lot of that big level project work. And at the moment, it's pretty much we have a meeting. We have a conversation, we have some pointed questions.
Weekly, monthly? What's the cadence on the meetings?
Right now it's monthly.
Okay.
And as we kind of do more and more and more, maybe it'll be less often. As we kind of build more automations, we really catch up with a lot of the things that we're doing manually right now. But the big thing is making sure that we kind of get a point from everyone to figure out like what are your pain points, and asking those pointed questions of like, what do you feel you're spending a lot of time on? What do you feel is very error prone? What do you feel is just an inefficient or annoying process? And kind of asking those specific questions so that you can really get good ideas out of them on, where are we struggling at? And then you can take those and I can add them to my list of automation, prioritize, and kind of just go forward from there.
Yeah, and building on that, the business intelligence side, from your interactions with MSPs, are you helping them to focus in on BI?
Oh, for sure. You mentioned Accenture, and I've worked with Accenture, PwC, and building out those center of excellences is critical because they need the visibility. And I would actually say, you mentioned it, Austin, like you want this kind of complete view of the business. Some of the best automations and some of the best visibility into intelligence I've ever seen have come from the non-technical. A lot of the time we kind of lean into the groups that are experts, right? Carl said it just a few minutes ago, though. It creates blind spots, right? Well, I can't do that in my RMM. I can't do that in PowerShell. I can't do that in the thing I'm using today. And so what ends up happening is if you're open to hearing the perspectives and the intelligence of the non-technical resources that are on the team but are still running into different problems, what you end up getting are kind of these really crazy ideas that you can do in different technologies. You can do things in MSP bots or in Roost or in other automation platforms that you can't do in traditional pieces. And when you get that mapped out, what integrations you have, what KPIs to hit, what metrics you're seeing, you can actually start to solve some problems you didn't think were solvable. And so having that visibility into it is critical, and having that kind of perspective from other groups. You mentioned Arlen, it's that perspective before planning is what you want to get with these groups.
Thank you. Again, I want to be respectful of everyone. I can't see too well with the lights on. Keep them on, of course. But is there a question? I'm seeing some hands, and I see one up front. We're going to run to the back first, and then we're going to come up front. If we could just get your name and your region or your business focus, and then your question, please. Thank you.
All right. Hello. I'm Daniel Villarreal. I'm from a managed service company in Texas. I'm actually one of the BI leads that's been designated to be one of the technical resources to own Roost. And I definitely came here a skeptic. One thing that has kind of been in the back of my mind that I'm really focusing on now since the early panels this morning or sessions is complexity and how you manage them. One thing that I'm afraid of, I'm sure many of the stakeholders are afraid of, is managing complexity as these processes evolve and iterate. And I wanted to get kind of a general idea of your best practice when it comes to managing complexity. Something that you said, Austin, that you still iterate on them and there's new things to focus on. How do I kind of help manage the expectations when we talk about the evolving complexity and introducing new complexities? Like, how do you kind of manage expectations of all of the stakeholders in terms of making sure they're not afraid to take that next step?
Very important is documentation in some way. For example, in Roost, you can put notes within an automation to kind of say, this is what this does. This is what this does. Mm-hmm. And you can also use that within whatever documentation platform you use. For example, I use IT Glue, and I can have a section where I kind of describe this is what this automation does, this is why it does it that way, and kind of explain the individual parts so that I know what it does. And so when I come back to it, maybe 6 months later, I don't have to manually look through everything and figure out what the heck it does.
So just as a follow-up, when we're looking at evolving workflows, should we, as the technical developers and those working on these workflows, allow them to kind of build out to be these massive workflows? Like, mainly one thing I'm trying to get a sense of is, in this industry, and you all being some of the forerunners in the industry, how big is too big, and how many conditions are too many inside of a singular workflow?
Brandon said it. Just get it as small, repeatable, bite-sized chunks. Mm-hmm. When I first implemented it at Sophos, our automation tool that we sold, we gave it to the SOC team without any oversight, and they built these gigantic, it might as well have been just a developer code, just pages and pages, instead of breaking it up. And then we said, oh, you can use this with like a crate, here and here and here and here, as small as possible, because you don't want to start building giant pieces of technical debt. We don't have giant development teams, but you could talk to that better.
Yeah, favorite words again, repeatable sub-workflows. That's the term in Roost. For every other automation platform. I'm sure there's something similar in there, but Yeah, I mean, the more you break it out into individual chunks, the more you can kind of use in other things. And another key benefit of that is if you need to change the way a small task works that's used across different workflows, if you change it in the sub workflow, that's going to update everywhere else that is referenced. So say you're calling an API and the API changes. The way it responds, the way you call it, the kind of way you need to format the authentication, rather than having to go into all of these massive workflows and remember, where am I using this call? You update that one sub workflow that's getting the information out of the API that you need with that specific call, and then it updates everywhere else. And it kind of helps you prevent these massive spaghetti tangled Christmas tree messes of workflows when you're really having one big top-level master workflow that is only calling those repeatable sub workflows you're building.
Okay, that makes sense. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Hi, it's Jack again, same guy who works at that MSP from Texas. We focus on the AEC industry, which is architecture, engineering, construction. What is not your favorite automation, but your staff's favorite automation?
What are they streaming right now?
So one I'm building right now that I think will be amazing, that I've gotten some good feedback on, is I'm currently getting basically all the time our technicians are spending on each customer and putting that into like a table so that our supervisors can really quickly see where are our techs actually spending their most time. Is there a specific customer that we're putting a ton of hours into and we need to look into? Or are they doing a lot of admin work? Why is that? Do we have internal processes that are inefficient? So I think that's a huge win that'll not just help them, but I think it'll also push future automations because we're going to understand where are our pain points at.
Yeah, I think the best workflows that our technicians love are the ones that let them do the things that they genuinely want to do. There's a lot of repeatable tasks that just kind of take up people's times, and they know how to do it, and it's not really challenging them, like user onboardings, changing repeatable settings that need to get updated. Like I need to update someone's calendar permissions. I don't know if anyone here services legal clients, but I think one of the most common tickets we get from our legal customers is I need to access this attorney's calendar. And it takes only 5 or 10 minutes, but they're doing that so many times a day, and it starts to add up. And we'll kind of probably circle back to this later, I believe, but it allows us to then start giving them time to learn and grow themselves in other areas when they're not doing these workflows. People kind of worry that automation is going to take jobs away from people, but I like to see it as automation is letting people really focus on the things that they want to do and spend less time on those just constant, mindless brain drain tasks that they just sit there doing and are waiting for something more interesting to come along in the ticket queue.
Yeah, I think you nailed it in what we're seeing with our partners, our clients, our customers is the thing that matches the skill set, right? You know, if you're an automation engineer and you have a password reset ticket, that's your next thing that you have to do. Just matching skills so that I'm adding value because we all like to solve problems. And if I'm being matched up to the wrong thing, then it's just draining me. And I'm going through at the end of the day, like, oh, why am I even doing this anymore?
A quick follow-up question on that. And I see a hand over here. We'll take your question next in just 1 minute. One of my great frustrations when I was a journalist covering the industry is, you know, I'd look at whether it was Salesforce or ServiceNow or Microsoft or Apple. They built, whether you love them or not, they built these massive marketplaces where everyone could go get the apps, right? And communities flourished. Do you see these automations potentially, like instead of MSPs building all these automations on their own and then they're siloed at the MSP, do you see a day when this all gets shared up in a public cloud infrastructure for us to rising tide lift all boats?
So I think it's already happening. I'm seeing a lot of community engagement in like MSP Geek. That's a great community that I'm a part of where and people are, it's just that sense of rising tides. People in the Roost Discord are constantly sharing workflows they're building. They're exporting them and saying, I want everyone else to use this workflow because I spent the time to build it and it's changing how our operations work. And I'm not going to keep it to myself. We have the weekly calls where people just show stuff off and people are a lot more open to sharing things when they're given a platform than you would think.
Yeah, I think, and this industry is unique. You know, you look at the peer groups across, we've always been open to opening our books. You go back to the early days of ConnectWise before it was Manage, and you had templates, service templates that people shared, and they're building on the community. Now you see it across, and I think there's incredible amounts of value in it, right? Google acquired Simplify for $500 million, and essentially it was just SIM and SOAR type templates that people were up sharing. Once you get that critical mass, it drives a tremendous amount of value. And I think you mentioned this SLI side where about a third of this industry is losing money or break even. We care about each other. And we want to make sure that everybody's getting better because we serve 48% of the world's economy. So I think that we'll definitely see that. And I think the marketplaces that we see are great.
So we've heard a lot from Jared and SnapTac and Raven about how they do their ROI calculations. Maybe I wanted to hear from each of you, what non-financial KPI do you really value and how do you use that to pick what you automate on top of what's going to get you profitable? Sure. My name is Brian Simpson. I'm the integration and automation specialist at Carpel. We're a managed services provider, kind of like a lot of the rest of everybody here, focusing mostly on senior living, and then we're also a software developer.
Consistency. I think consistency is a really key bringer value when it comes to automation. When you are doing the same task over and over and over again, it's only human to forget a step sometimes. Going back to the example of making a contact for a new customer or a new user at one of our customers in ConnectWise, people would forget sometimes. It's on the checklist. It's part of the ticket, but you're doing it and you're going into the next task. And from a technician standpoint, it's not super common to not have a bunch of information flying at you at the same time out of Teams, out of email, trying to get the thing done, trying to look at what tickets to come up next in your calendar. Maybe you're getting a call transferred to you. So being able to ensure that something is happening the same way again and again and again, and the automation is not going to miss a step. And if it has to, if there's an error, then it can report and say, this is what I missed, is so important. And it brings value in other areas outside of time saving where you don't have to go back and fix something, but also security. If you're trying to make sure people get added to consistent security groups, making sure that someone's not misclicking something. One of the things that was brought up yesterday in the pre-day for Breaching 365 is attackers can sometimes do a watering hole attack where they will make a group that's just the same name as administrators and sit there and wait and hope that one day some administrator is going to come across and they see two admin groups and they'll just go, I'll click both of them. One of them's got to be right. But being able to have the automation know this is the ID, I'm going to put it in here, it helps so much with that.
Consistency is also the one we use, and to give some examples, before we really got into automation, I constantly heard complaints from our VP of customer service that we're just getting things wrong on these new user and computer setups. There's always something that's going wrong, it seems like. And she was like, why can't these people get it right? And it's like, they're human. They make mistakes. But now that we've built into the automation, we kind of see the customers are happy. They're telling us, hey, this new tool is great. We love it. It's simple for us to fill out. We're seeing a lot more consistency. It's getting done faster. We love it. And so you can really see that effect on the customer, that consistency is a huge thing for them. They love it.
Yeah, I would say that's one of the things, consistency, CSAT, and internal employee satisfaction. Consistency has to be in existence before you automate a process, right? You need to know that 997 times out of 1,000, this thing's going to work this way before you take the human out of it. And so that consistency in measuring that is huge. CSAT, obviously, if our customers are happy, we're happy. And if the task or the action happens again and again and again, and you can start with that baseline. I'm running a BI company, so of course I do like to start with baseline. But I love starting the baseline before I do something and then after, but then seeing that employee side is huge. We work with Team GPS and Crewwho and a couple others, but with Team GPS, we actually threw our bots in there for them so that before they start to automate a task or before they do that, they can take a baseline employee score and then afterwards say, oh, okay, now that we've automated this thing, they're happier. And we want to keep our people happy, right? Happy people make productive people. And so it's a good thing.
Other questions? I just want to do a time check. There's a question over here. While we're waiting for the mic to get to you, just a time check. We've got about 15 minutes left on this panel. We're going to shift the conversation on this panel to managing the roadmap in terms of where do we go forward with the roadmap and the communication process about that. And we'd welcome questions in that area. And also, if you want to go a little bit outside that pond, that's absolutely fine. We'll move in those areas as well. Yes, go ahead. Question, sir.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Derek. I work for an MSP in Southwest Florida. One of the things that I've kind of experienced some trouble on, Brandon touched on it, is getting the client's engagement with filling out forms, things like that. I've talked to several clients, and it seems like about 60% of them seem to take the edge of, well, that's your job. Why am I doing this? How can you touch on how you get those clients engaged?
Yeah. So the easier and more on rails you make your forms, the better. And you really want to describe the value in terms that are beneficial to the customer. Just as much as it's saving you time, it's saving them time too. We have rolled out customer-facing onboarding forms where they can request their own users. They're already submitting tickets and forms that are going to us with information on what's their first name, what's their last name, what's their email. All this information they're already collecting and sending. So we're saying, hey, we just want you to put this in here instead. And on top of that, you're going to have, instead of having to type in everyone's, like their manager information, what groups they want, you're going to get drop downs. And these drop downs are going to automatically update themselves and have all of the information you need right there up front. And on top of that, you're not going to have to wait for a ticket to go in a queue. And it's going to get seen by a technician within a few hours, whatever our SLA is for you. And then we're going to spend another 30, 45 minutes to actually make the user. Once you submit that form, unless you pick to have a delay on it, it's just going to start running. And it's going to take 5, 6 minutes for it to happen. And by the time you submit the form, go get a cup of coffee and come back, you're going to have the user's credentials sent to you and a password link in your email. And if selected, sent to the new user as well. And you're done. So it's something really easy for them to understand, where it's like, not only is this going to be easier for my team to fill out, it's going to get us faster responses and that consistency too. You know, maybe you don't want to bring up your customers. Remember all those things we forgot last time we did the setup for you? But let them know, like, hey, the benefit of this is the robots don't forget things. As long as you pick the right option of the form, of course, you know, there's going to be a little bit of effort on their side. But it's going to make sure that this is set up the exact same every single way, and you're not going to have to call us back.
Yeah, you said it, that this works 365, 24/7. It's not going to drop the ball. And then the other thing I would add to that is just, if it's possible, meet them where they are in their process, right? If you're federated in their teams, get that form in there, because people, you know, I don't know, I'm kind of old, definitely older than I look, but the who moved my cheese, if anybody knows that, you know, you got to do as much as you can to either poke on the pain or make it so good for them that they don't have any other choice but to do what you need them to do.
And that 24/7, 365 is a really good point too. Raise your hand if you're an MSP, and every single one of your customers tell you exactly 72 hours before their employee starts that they have a new employee starting. I don't see a single hand in this room going up. They're going to remember, they're going to see someone sitting at a desk that hasn't had someone sitting in it for 6 months and go, oh crap, I didn't submit the form, and now it's your guys' job to get it done in the next -5 minutes, or we're going to start blowing up the service desk manager and asking, why do I have an employee sitting here not doing anything? And you can even remove needing to fill out a form. There's a lot of APIs that are coming out of HR software now too. As soon as someone gets added to payroll, figure out if their HR software can send a webhook out to your automation tool and say, hey, we have a new user starting. Here's their first name. Here's their last name. Here's their phone number. Here's their position. Here's their job title. Most of the information you're collecting, HR is already putting into their portal. And that's something where you can say, you don't even have to fill out a form anymore. Just make sure it's going in consistently correct with the HR platform. And if we need more information, you'll get an email saying, hey, we noticed you added a new user to your HR. Do you also want to add them to your IT management software as well? And if so, go ahead and click this link, fill out these just 3 or 4 questions for what applications they need or what group they should be in.
Offboarding to the employee, right?
Yeah, exactly. Offboarding too. Again, how many times do people tell you when they're supposed to be offboarding versus how many times do they get a bill at the end of the month and say, why am I paying for 47 users when we have 45? Like, okay, well, you never told us that they left. And now they've just had access to all of your systems since you fired them 3 weeks ago. That kind of goes back to the security aspect of it too, outside of time saving.
Got it. Excellent. Hey, Gary, just do a shout out if you got anyone else asking more questions, all right? And by the way, for those who don't know, Gary Pica Jr., just a great person, has always been responsive to my inquiries over the last decade about what the hell's going on in this industry. So, Gary, thank you for everything over the years. I really appreciate it.
We love you, Gary.
Okay, managing the roadmap and communication processes. How often do you review and update the automation roadmap? And by the way, I'm clueless. What's even in the roadmap?
I'll let you take that one.
Yeah, admittedly, my process is a bit rudimentary right now. I personally use an Excel sheet just because being able to mark cells with colors just tickles my brain the right way. But yeah, so I look at that. It's prioritized based on whatever is highest priority. I keep notes in there on like where I'm at so far, any issues I'm running into, any additions I need to make, and I just kind of go through it top to bottom, priority. And I also have it separated out based on what team asked, just so I can better organize things. And I just do my best to keep in communication with the person I'm working with, like, hey, that's where I'm at so far. Haven't forgotten about you, just taking a bit of time. And yeah, just kind of make sure communication is up and keep working through the list.
Yeah. We have 2 methods at our MSP around how to get that done. The first off, every single ticket in ConnectWise PSA has a checkbox, EDF on there that says automation ? And anyone doing a ticket, no matter what role they can click the automation ? button, and that sets a flag for the ticket when we do our reviews every month to say, hey, someone said we should have an automation for this, and we can go back and see, does one exist that they're just not aware of, or do we need to build this? We've also done a little bit of R&D, Robin duplicating from Roost, and they use Canny for their user requests. We have an internal Canny account. It's free. It basically lets anyone in the organization submit a request for a new feature. And we have our technicians submitting requests for automations in there. And we have a big Kanban board of in progress, completed, needs more information. And the needs for information is key. Aaron always says you can't automate a process that doesn't exist. There was a LinkedIn post that I was tagged in from Dean at Helped, and it was one of his Spicy Monday posts where he said, automation can't fix everything. And I actually had someone come up to me and say, who is this guy? Why is he tagging you in this saying automation can't do anything when you're presenting about automation? And he's right. Automation can't fix a process problem. It can't fix a people problem. You need to make sure that your process is dialed in if you're going to be running it over and over and over again. Because if you automate a bad or inefficient process, you're going to have consistently bad and inefficient results. So one of the things we look for when we're getting these requests in is there a process? If not, can you define it? Can we help you define it? Because we're not even going to start looking at the automation until we have that blueprint and we know it works. We're not going to go ahead and build something and come back and fix it because we realize, oh, we could have done this better. There is a little bit of iteration on it, of course, but we want to make sure we have a rock-solid foundation to start.
Just one follow-up as you're sharing thoughts there. Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you talking about AI later today, or is it tomorrow?
It's tomorrow.
Okay, all right. So we haven't brought up generative AI and what's going on. In terms of that roadmap you're building out, is AI on it? Is it not? Is it sort of like you're sampling things and trying to figure out what's real and what's not? Where are you?
Yeah. I won't spoil too much of our panel tomorrow, which we're after lunch with my good friend Alden from iTech, but we are using generative AI in certain areas. AI is really good at some things. It's not super great at other things, and we need to realize that it is in a very, very strong growth period right now. So we'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow. But Austin, Colin, I'd love to know if you guys are using AI and what you're doing too.
Yeah, I mean, we exist as MSP bots because in 2016, my founder saw a YouTube video when he was bored after he sold his MSP about AI is coming and it's going to change everything. And he said, oh, I need to get all the data and I need to figure out the processes so that I can actually affect change and work with that. And so we do use it, and I use it actually in building automations. It could get you about 60, 80% of the way there if you had the right parameters and the right data to start with. We absolutely are, and it's in silly ways to make it better. One of my favorite ways is everybody's talking about sentiment analysis, but what they typically talk about is customer sentiment analysis. We're an industry of people that want to help, but also somewhat prickly introverts. So we've actually had customers flip the sentiment analysis on the technicians to say, hey, maybe we should see what the sentiment of the bedside manner that my techs are giving to them, not what the sentiment of the customer is. And that's actually been a major differentiator for a lot of our people. I'll let you finish and then I'll go to the other topic.
Yeah, I'm going to spoil one thing because you actually touched on something really important. One of the things we're actually asking our AI bot for sentiment analysis is what is the confidence of the technician in their notes? Do they have any questions? Do they seem uncertain? Are they filling out a lot more of the research fields? Where do we need to train on this?
Yeah, and that's where you can get RAG involved and actually start to look at your IT glue, your documentation, and suggest articles really quickly when you get that vector database. It's nice.
Excuse me. My name is David, MSP out of Denver, Colorado. I'm a huge believer in automation. For a little context, back in olden times, I was vice president of engineering at WebRoot. To the point the gentleman brought up about BI and my big concern, and I'm curious how you're thinking about this as you go forward, is technical debt. Making sure that things don't go horribly wrong when someone makes a change to a production automation. What does that look like in the future? Because that's where I worry. I don't worry about automating. I worry about not breaking stuff that's been automated.
So,
Just a time check. 3 minutes left.
Okay.
2 minutes answering this question, and then 1 minute to sort of wrap up. 2 minutes, go.
cool. I'll be fast. Because I've run dev teams, that's exactly what I've been telling everyone. It is like you're building a dev team. You've got to think of it this way. Canny, perfect, right? You think about that technical debt. It's why we have the bite-sized chunks. The reason that, in my opinion, I've known Carl over from Snack Tech and now Raven for years and years and years. The reason they were able to leap ahead so quickly was because I know the hundreds of thousands of hours that he put into IT Glue. He was already taking tier 1 technicians and making them operate as tier 3 technicians for Snap Tech for years. So those processes were in place, and he knew that, like I said earlier, 997, 999 times out of 1,000, this process is going to be followed this way. All we're doing is making sure that the robot actually follows it that way. So the reality is dedicating a team to keeping up with technical debt, dedicating a team to actually understand what the automations are doing, whether that's a console or a review process, and making sure that you're actually automating the things that are going to end up with the right end result is how I look at it. But it's absolutely taking on technical debt.
Any other follow-ups, 30 seconds or less?
30 seconds. You hit the nail on the head, Callan. Good job.
Love you guys.
Yeah, just one last note. If you have any further questions, I think I can speak for all of us. Stop us, talk to us. We want to hear what you got to say, answer your questions, and you can ask questions right on our panel on the Whova app. So make sure you do that as well.
Okay. Closing thought. Give me roughly 30 seconds for the attendee that heads back to the office. What is the one thing they should be thinking about based on this panel? Is there a key takeaway that you want them to go bring back to the office?
If you're in this room, you're an early adopter and you need to capitalize on that. Look at your processes, look at things you have already defined and know what you're doing on, and take those to your leadership and say, we're doing this 5 times a day, even if it takes 5 or 10 minutes each. What do you think in time and labor savings we can get out of this if we were to have a robot do this the same way every single time someone needed this to happen?
Okay. Any other takeaways?
Just to catapult off what Brandon said, talk to your team. Show them what are the processes we're spending a lot of time on, and just communicate with them. We're all in this together. You don't operate in a silo. Talk to your team, work with them, and together you can provide better customer service.
I would say make sure you understand the automation and the APIs that are currently available in the tool set you use. Make sure you understand the skill set of your teams, right? The network automation is not the same as DevOps automation, is not the same as scripting automation. There are different types of automation, and make sure you have good coverage across.
Fantastic. Well, how about a hand for our panelists?